Hello and welcome to Doubles and Trebles. It's Pieman here. It's been a while, hasn't it? I'm back dusting off the microphone to give you a preview of the second biggest darting major of the year, which starts this weekend. It's the World Matchplay from Blackpool. I cannot wait for it. Genuinely, probably my favourite event of the year. I know I say that about a few events, but I think World Matchplay, in terms of just sheer quality, is just unrivaled. And this year in particular, we have 30 of the world's top 32 qualifying. So it is a stacked field, so many great first round matches. And it's going to be an absolute feast of darts over the next week or so. Um, I'm obviously going to take you through match by match, quickfire as possible. But first, I think we should probably start with a look at the outright betting, which is there on your screens. And as you can see, Michael van Gerwen and Gerwyn Price going off joint favourites just about around the 4-1, 9-2 mark. I think that is more than fair given their achievements over the last 12 months or so. Michael Smith in there at around 11-2, 6. So just a point or so bigger than the other two. Then a massive leap up to Luke Humphries at 14 and Josh Rock at 20s. And it's kind of 25s bar beyond that. So it's priced like a two-horse race. We'll see whether it will be a two-horse race. I'm going to go through the games quarter by quarter. So obviously this isn't the order that the matches are going to be played, but it's just breaking down the bracket of the draw, which seems like the most logical approach. So we'll start there with quarter one. So the top section of the draw is obviously spearheaded by Michael Smith, the world number one, and I won't spend too much time on his first game because I think it's a fairly straightforward assignment for the world champ playing Steve Beaton. Delighted to see the Bronze Adonis qualify for this. What an almighty effort from him. But unfortunately, he does have the lowest seasonal average of anybody in the field, and I don't think that's going to be enough to worry Michael Smith, who probably has lacked consistency in terms of his top game. Does have an equipment manufacturer change as well to factor in. He's recently joined the little known Shot Darts, which is an interesting move. Be interesting to see if that has an impact on his game, but I think he'll have too much scoring power for Beaton, who would need to add sort of 5 or 6 points onto his annual average to threaten Smith. So Smith win there, and I think he probably covers the handicap. James Wade and Chris Dobey, on the other hand, is a really, really tight game, 10-11 the pair, and the bookies really struggling to split them. Understandable why, but I'm leaning towards James Wade, who I think's had an absolute renaissance in the last month or two. Not sure it's had the coverage that it should have really. But, I always say with James Wade, if he can add some relentless scoring to his game, then he's a danger to anybody, and that's exactly what he's done in the last few weeks. The 140s and 180s are far more prevalent. And, when you mix that with his ruthless finishing and efficient sort of counting and all-round game, it just makes him a nightmare opponent for anyone. Chris Dobey obviously having the year of his life. He's a Masters champion. He's been in the Premier League, acquitted himself very well there, I think, even if the results didn't quite stack up as he would have liked. And, that he's got every right to think that this is a winnable tie for him. But I have to say, on what I've seen in recent times, I have to favour Wade, and I actually could see Wade causing Michael Smith problems in round two as well. Danny Noppert versus Martin Schindler is an interesting one, isn't it? Two players who probably haven't been at their brilliant best in 2023, but I'm leaning towards Noppert, as is the market. I just think he's a little bit more reliable. He's relentlessly consistent, isn't he? If you had to describe him in one word, it would be consistency. He very rarely has a bad leg. He's a solid one treble, two treble scorer, and his finishing, especially his three figure out shots, are as good as anyone, I think now. I genuinely think he's becoming one of the best in the world at these three figure checks. Shindy does generally raise his game for the majors. He's a very good scorer himself on his day, but he kind of blew it against Gerwyn Price last year in the first round. He does have a little bit of that in him, a bit of finishing line fear. And I expect it to be nip and tuck early on and then maybe Noppert to just pull away at the end. And the final game in this quarter is Nathan Aspinall versus Christoph Ratajski. Asp is a fairly warm favourite. Understandable given the pedigrees of the pair. Aspinall was in the Premier League as well. He did okay. He'll have been pleased with how that campaign went, I think. He looks to be over that wrist injury. He does seem to have a little bit of an issue with the release of the dart, dare I say, dartitis. I think he has commented on it himself and said that, he's not sure what's going on, but it's kind of under control. I would agree with that. I don't think it's impacting his performance as such. I think this is a tough little game for him against Ratajski, who hasn't really done much for the last sort of 2 years, but then suddenly in the last couple of months has given us some signs of life. I was really impressed with the way he played at the World Cup alongside Christoph Kachuk. He won Players' Championship 8 recently, which ended a long title drought for him. And he's also had some promising scalps as well. Beat Chizzy, beat Dimitri, beat Rob Cross in the last couple of months. So, yeah, we're just getting back to that Ratajski that everybody used to fear in the majors, with his constant sort of 140 hitting and reliable double 16 pinning. So yeah, I think there's the sort of ingredients there for an upset. Aspinall's record at Blackpool not the best either. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Ratajski turn him over there. So looking at the quarter betting for quarter one, and Michael Smith, unsurprisingly, a short price favourite. He's actually the shortest price favourite for any of the quarters, which I find quite hard to believe. I like Michael Smith. I was pleased for him to win the Worlds, but he's never been a player to kind of hang your hat on. He had that very good stint at the back end of last year, but 2023, I think, has been up and down. And when you add in the manufacturer stuff as well, there's just enough reason for me to look elsewhere here. You probably know where I'm going here, but I think 10-1 double figures about James Wade for this quarter is very fair. If he gets past Chris Dobey, as I think he will, I fancy him to give Michael Smith a real game here. Wade's played Smith countless times. He loves Blackpool, 6-time finalist at Blackpool and a one-time winner, of course. I know that's in the back catalogue, but he is playing very, very well. He's close to peak Wade, seems in a good place mentally. And yeah, I'm more than happy to chance James Wade for quarter one at 10-1. So on to quarter two, and this is Gerwyn Price's quarter. Unsurprisingly, he's favourite to prevail from it, and he'll take on Stephen Bunting in his opener. These two know all about each other, of course. Played out a World semi-final only 2 or 3 years ago, and Bunting won't be overawed by facing the Iceman, but he will have to lift it a little bit based on what we've seen this year. He's really struggled for consistency. I do think he saves his best for the majors, but this is a nightmare draw. Price has been head and shoulders above everyone in terms of consistency this year. His seasonal average is just shy of a ton, which is amazing when you think about how many games he's played. And when he's won tournaments, he's genuinely looked like he could go on and dominate the year. He's maybe just, he's picking and choosing his tournaments, but we all know he targets the big ones, and he had a pretty rotten record at Blackpool until last year when he made the final. Ton plus averages all over the place, and it was only an inspired Michael van Gerwen that stopped him in an absolute classic 18-14. So yeah, I expect Price to prevail here, and he's priced to do so. Joe Cullen takes on Mike De Decker in the second game of this quarter, and Cullen a favourite, although probably a little bit more narrow than some would have expected. I think that's a testament to Mike De Decker. The young Belgian, he's taken a while to work his own game out, lost his card initially, had to get it back, not really pulled up any trees for a while, but only now in the last year or so we're starting to see the real deal, as he's nicknamed. The Belgian has immense scoring power. I mean, he hits 180s as good as anyone, and that is always scary for an opponent. But I think Joe Cullen is experienced enough to not panic if De Decker starts with the fireworks. And these two met in the Players' Championship last weekend, where Cullen kind of did a job on De Decker. He'll have to be better than he was then, the young Belgian. I expect Cullen to prevail. I think he's a little bit of an out of sight, out of mind player that we do get at this time of the year, where with him missing out on the Premier League, we haven't seen all that much of him on our TV screens. But what I've seen on the Players' Championship in the last few weeks, I've been quietly encouraged by. And I think he'll fancy his chances of a run here and maybe upsetting Gerwyn Price in round two. Rob Cross versus Daryl Gurney, obviously two players with a lot of pedigree within the sport. Probably not quite where they would like to be. Rob Cross threatening to get back to that top level much more, it must be said. Although their seasonal records are very similar in terms of win percentage and in terms of average. So Gurney to be priced at 9-5 outsider in this will interest some, I think. Cross certainly passes the vision test. Like when you're watching him, he looks the more likely of the two to go on and sort of win a Euro Tour or have a deep run in a major. But no, when I look at the stats and I consider Gurney, he is a player who, when you back him, he will inevitably flop and vice versa. So he's a difficult one to get right. I'm more than happy to swerve this contest with with an interest in whether Gurney can outrun his odds. And the last game of the quarter is surely the tie of the round. I mean, there's 2 or 3 that could compete for it, but on paper, Dave Chisnell versus Gary Anderson certainly gets the blood rushing from a darts fan perspective. 2 of the greatest to ever do it. And, there's no separating them in the betting. There's been money for Anderson to make it a coin toss. And what can you say about Gary Anderson? I mean, I get ribbed on this channel for my praise of him in years gone by, but the numbers are finally backing it up now. Are we back to the old Flying Scotsman? Well, the numbers say yes, but we still need to see him go and do it on a major stage. In terms of 2023, only Gerwen Price has averaged higher than Anderson. He won a Players' Championship to end a long losing drought, and all the signs are good, really. We know how much he loves the match play and loves majors. So, he'll be desperate to do well here. And at least with Chiz, as much as it's a hard game, it's somebody he knows very well. And it's someone he has an upper hand against on the head-to-heads. Anderson won 18 versus Chisnell's 6 in their previous 24 meetings. That is a whopping head-to-head advantage for 2 fairly evenly matched players. And you just wonder whether Gary Anderson's sort of mind games have a bit of an impact on Dave Chisnell, whether, Gary kind of knows how to soften him up. And I remember when they met in the World Semis 3 years ago, Anderson was very jovial with Chizzy before the game, and sure enough, Chizzy didn't really get going, as Anderson kind of did a job on him. So will it be more of the same? Who knows? But it'd be very interesting to see how it plays out. So, quarter 2 betting, Gerwyn Price, understandably a warm favourite for this one. And to be honest, I'm not in a rush to take him on. I think he comes through this quarter. There will be some obvious challenges along the way, notably Gary Anderson, Dave Chisnell, the winner of that match. The 13-2 on offer from Sky about Gary Anderson for the quarter is slightly interesting, but I'm struggling to play out a scenario in my head where Gerwyn Price doesn't beat Gary Anderson over the best of 21 legs, as much as I would love to see Gary do it. Joe Cullen is the sneaky one at 14 that I just think, may have been overlooked a tad, especially when you consider he's quite a warm order to come through his first game with Mike De Decker. So Cullen, I could make a case for him at 14. That does look like a little bit of potentially a rick. But I think Gerwyn Price is rock solid at 5-4. So that would be where I would be advising. Quarter 3 then, this is the most open of the lot, largely down to Peter Wright's abject season. Remarkably, he's actually lost more matches than he's won this season, which is insane for a 2-time world champion and the world number 2. But I think, we should probably mention that there's clearly some off-hockey bits and pieces in his personal life that are impacting performance. Equipment issues is nothing new, but his confidence does look a bit dented, and recently lost 6-0 to Stephen Burton on the Pro Tour, averaging in the high 60s, low 70s. Lost to Jared Cole in the next Players' Championship, and then subsequently skipped the 2 most recent Players' Championships and a Euro Tour. So, I hope Peter Wright can get back to enjoying his darts first and foremost, and hopefully get back to the levels that we associate with him. He may well do it here because he's had a little break, and we've seen that work for him before, where he has a break and comes back refreshed. But it's hard to say with any confidence that he's going to beat Andrew Gilding, the UK Open champion, of course, who will just play the board and not play the occasion. We know what we get from Gilding. He's been rock solid this year. And, more of the same of that might be enough to beat Wright. But this game's all about which Peter Wright turns up. So I'm more than happy to swerve it from a betting perspective. And I'm going to give the same advice for the next game, Ryan Searle versus Raymond van Barneveld. I just don't know what Barney's going to turn up. I mean, he's done brilliantly to get here. And there has been some flashes of greatness this year. Very recently at a Euro Tour, he beat Michael van Gerwen and then beat Ryan Searle in the next round, albeit it was a 6-5 and a contest that could have gone either way. Searle certainly the more reliable of the pair these days, but Barney has that added class factor. So if Barney, turns up and embraces the crowd, embraces the occasion, then, he may well get the better of Searle, but I wouldn't be getting involved in this game. Searle, a narrow favourite, and I think that's purely on his reliability. Johnny Clayton's quite a warm order to beat Gabriel Clemens, and I think that's fair enough. The Ferret's not been at his brilliant best in the last year or so, but his base level is very reliable, and it'll take a very good performance from Gabriel Clemens to beat him over 10 legs. We've seen the best of the German when he flew into the World Championship semi-finals unexpectedly in December, but his 2023 has been patchy at best, and while he can be brilliant and he can live with these top players, consistency is letting him down from making that breakthrough. So I have to lean towards Clayton in that one. Then final game of the quarter, like quarter two, could end up being the best one. Dimitri van den Bergh versus Ross Smith. Two of the best scorers in darts, two of the most exciting players to watch, certainly when they actually throw their darts. Maybe not, Dimitri can take his sweet time sometimes, but you can't doubt the talent that either of these two possess. Ross Smith's year has probably not been as sort of glittering as he would have hoped, but the European champion's form is still very respectable. His average seasonally is actually higher than Van den Bergh, though that should also be pointed out is probably down to Van den Bergh playing in the Premier League, where he's playing a top 8 opponent week in, week out. So that's bound to impact your win-loss. Van den Bergh was amazing at the Poland Darts Masters. I mean, he hasn't had a great run of things recently. Prior to that, but there was some huge averages going in, ton plus averages going in. So his recent form suggests that he's the man to be with. And I also really like the fact that he's got a great match play record, won it, been to the final again since. Long format, loves the venue, loves the long legs. So, I'm leaning towards Dimitri. I just don't think Ross Smith is quite where he was this time last year, but it's still got all the ingredients of a great game. So looking at the quarter three betting then, and I think, you'd have to say that on paper, you think that an open quarter makes for a good betting heat, but actually what it's done is it's kind of just condensed the odds for everybody, and nobody is massively overpriced. I think Dimitri van den Bergh is the one that stands out to me at 11-2, given his pedigree within the tournament. And I don't think that there should be a 2-point difference between him and Johnny Clayton, provisionally meeting in round two. And I think that's a coin toss of a game. So that would be my 2 pence for that quarter, but I wouldn't be going mad on it either way. The final quarter is an enticing one, and it starts with Michael van Gerwyn, who I think has, similar to Michael Smith, a pretty routine first-round game here. Brendan Dolan did actually win the pairs-only meeting so far this season, but that was a Players' Championship event, and first to 10 is a very different matter, especially in a major. Definitely suits Van Gerwyn, and he's priced to win this very easily. Van Gerwyn actually drifted to 11-2 in the outright market for this tournament, would you believe, when he issued a statement a couple of weeks ago saying that his impending jaw and dental surgery was impacting his game and that he would simply have to try his best for the Poland Darts Masters and the match play. Thankfully, his best is pretty good, it turns out, because he averaged 104, 110 and 113 on his way to winning that Polish Darts Masters, and a repeat of that form is going to make him impossible to stop this week. However, I do think over a week of darts, if you're playing through the pain barrier, there's bound to be days where you feel better than others, and we may see a wobble from MVG at some point, but then again, who knows? I mean, there was no wobble in Poland, was there? I think he does a job on Dolan. Damon, Heta and Josh Rock is another contender for tie of the round. The unseeded Josh Rock are quite a warm favourite to beat the seeded Damon Heta, who has won 3 titles this year. 2 titles, excuse me. So, a little bit surprising them perhaps, but it just goes to show the reputation that Josh Rock carries. I do think the dynamics changed a little bit for Josh Rock now. When he broke through last year, he was this breath of fresh air. It was a hype around him and an excitement. Now people are expecting him to perform. They're expecting him to go and win a major this year. And that is a totally different kind of pressure. I think he's up to the job. I think he speaks really well and he'll handle the pressure. But all that aside, this is a really, really tough game for him. Not many players in as good as form as Damon Heta at the moment. And I personally think it is inevitable that he's going to have a breakthrough run at one of these majors this year, a semi or a final. And, the prices that we're seeing quoted about Heta for majors now, they're just not going to be there in 12 months' time. This game is very tough to predict, obviously. But I've got a feeling that being the underdog suits Damon, and I think I would be playing Heta to prevail here at the prices. The other two games I see is fairly clean-cut, straightforward. Luke Humphries is in far better form than Jose de Sousa. As much as we want to see Jose back to his best, and there were the odd sign of it, a good run to the Players' Championship semis recently. Luke Humphries is in a different stratosphere at the moment. He's winning titles sort of left, right, and centre. He's right up there with MVG and Price in terms of title wins in the last sort of 18 months or so. So I think he does a job on Jose there, just as I think Dirk van Dijvenbode does a job on Kim Huybrechts. Other than the random Players' Championship 3 win, Kim Huybrechts has done next to nothing, and he's another one like Gurney who's just kind of clinging on from previous achievements, and this may be Kim's last appearance at the World Matchplay. I wouldn't be massively surprised. Always a dangerous player on his day, but I think the exciting scoring he has when he's at his best is just on a par with Dirk van Dijvenbode's kind of average game. Obviously worries about Dirk when it gets to the latter stages of major with his kind of questionable finishing line mindset in finals and stuff, but in these kind of games I don't see any problem for him. So yeah, comfortable wins for Humphries and Dirk there for me. Quarter 4 betting, and Michael van Gerwen is a 6-4 favourite, which I think some would maybe expect him to be a bit shorter, but it's testament to the quality in this quarter. I think he's going to have to play probably 2 top 10, top 16 players before he gets to the semis. Luke Humphries is the obvious danger. Don't think there's much juice in that price, although I do think he's got a great chance of a run here. The one that stands out to me at the prices, as I've mentioned, is Heta at 12-1. I just don't think these kind of prices are going to be about for long on him. It's inevitable that he has a run at some stage. Now, that Josh Rock game is obviously a bit of a coin toss, but the fact that Rock is 6-1 for the quarter and Heta is double the price, that is a bet for me. So very much on the similar lines to James Wade. I think, of course he has a big name to knock out, but I think he's very capable of doing it. So Damon Heta at 12-1 for quarter 4 is a play for me. Outright market then, and I think, look, Van Gerwen and Gerwyn Price are worthy favourites. I do kind of expect them both to come through their respective quarters. I know I've played Heta in quarter 4, but obviously Van Gerwen is by far the likeliest winner of that quarter. I don't really want to get stuck into either of them at 4s, because even if they were to both get to the final, I wouldn't really know who would win it. I do think there is a play for keeping them 2 on side. Bet365 got 12-1 on a Van Gerwen Price final. I think that's very fair. So that would be the way I would play that. I'd take that as my cover bet for the big hitters, just sort of cream rising to the top like last year. But in the outright markets, the 2 men I have mentioned, James Wade and Damon Heta, I think are both worth a second look. They're both priced at 50-1. You will get bigger on the exchange for both of them, more into the 60s. I think you could definitely, if you're into back to late or similar, definitely if you back both, get a run from at least one of them. Here's hoping anyway. I also think Joe Cullen at 80 could be worth keeping on side, just in case he knocks out Price and causes chaos on that side of the draw. But yeah, I'm just going to take it match by match, see how the tournament goes. Maybe back later in the tournament with another video. Let's just see how things roll. But either way, I hope you've enjoyed this preview. Let me know in the comments who you're backing, and hopefully we'll see you again very soon. Enjoy the darts and take it easy.